menstrual blood tells you such a vast amount about our overall health that it's really a blessing. You have phases of your menstrual cycle and that they affect everything about your productivity and how social you are, and that there can be imbalances. Your estrogen and progesterone, like if we actually lean into it, like there is so much power in your menstrual cycle.
I've never been on birth control. Growing up, where I thought being crazy and mental and fighting with my mom was normal, but I didn't know that it was cyclical. And then it was only until
we've been taught that our period is a weakness, and if you pause for your period, you're weaker, you're lesser than men, and you have less value. What do you say to that?
Actress and entrepreneur Ashley Greene Khoury,
best known for her role in the Twilight franchise,
joins us alongside her sister-in-law, Olivia Khoury,
a creative entrepreneur with a background in functional medicine.
Together, they co-founded Hummingway, a women's health brand redefining period care with non-toxic, science-backed solutions.
From personal journeys with hormonal imbalances and PMDD to launching products like the Soother,
Ashley and Olivia are here to share how they're reshaping reproductive health, one cycle at a time.
our main hero product, the Soother patch. A lot of the ingredients in the patch have naturally occurring terpenes that work with the CBD to help it either enhance the effects. CBD does a very similar thing that NSAIDs do, where it stops or inhibits.
Have you guys been faced with criticism? Because I feel like every time an innovation comes out in the women's health space to help them, especially there's doctors who are like, but you have the pill, you have ibuprofen, there's Midol, why fix it? It's not broken.
Our answer to that always is that we are creating something that is...
Welcome back to the Dr. Brighten Show. I'm your host, Dr. Jolene Brighten. I'm board certified in naturopathic endocrinology, a nutrition scientist, a certified sex counselor, and a certified menopause specialist. As always, I'm bringing you the latest, most up-to-date information to help you take charge of your health and take back your hormones. If you enjoy this kind of information, I invite you to visit my website, drbrighten.com, where I have a ton of free resources for you, including a newsletter that brings you some of the best information, including updates on this podcast. Now, as always, this information is brought to you cost-free, and because of that, I have to say thank you to my sponsors for making this possible. It's my aim to make sure that you can have all the tools and resources in your hands and that we end the gatekeeping. And in order to do that, I do have to get support for this podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I know your time is so valuable and so important, and it's not lost on me that you're sharing it with me right now. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or share this with a friend because it helps this podcast get out to everyone who needs it. All right, let's dive in. All right, Ashley, the big question people have is, what is an actress/model doing stepping into the period space?
Well, I am a female who has a period. And
imagine that.
And I actually was not concerned about my period or menstrual health in the slightest until I was in my 30s. And then I got off hormonal birth control and realized that I didn't know anything about my reproductive health whatsoever. And so that's kind of what put me into this space. I had the best periods ever, and then realized that, oh, this is not really great for you, and got off hormonal birth control. And it was incredibly difficult because I then realized that, oh, I have all of these symptoms that are being masked by birth control, and now I have to figure out a way to fix them. And when I go to my primary care doctor, no fault of their own, but like they don't know what to do with me and how to look at my body holistically. And so I go on Accutane for your acne, go on SSRIs if you have mood swings or feeling depressed one day. A lot of additional Band-Aids versus going, what is actually happening inside of my body and how do I fix it without putting something else in my body that's going to have some kind of adverse effect? And so that is what I am doing in this space is I said, I'm so lost, but I'm so frustrated with what I am being fed, which is kind of, I think, a lot of bullet points that people have been telling us for eons about, like, oh, just go on birth control and it will fix everything, or go on this and it will fix everything. And when you ask the question of, well, what about this symptom and where's the root of it and where's it coming from? Doctors don't really have any training in nutrition and they don't understand a lot of these things. And so anyways, I went to Olivia because her mom raised them very holistically and was a homeopath and said, this is what's happening. Can we try and figure this out together because I'm frustrated and lost? And so that was kind of what started this journey of Hummingway. And I first said my biggest pain point is that my cramps are now starting to feel debilitating.
Yeah.
So let's maybe figure out a way to treat those naturally, or let's figure out a way to find out what is causing these things to happen. And so Olivia and I did a ton of research for 2 years during COVID and said, let's figure out everything we can figure out about ourselves. And when we did that and started polling other people, they kind of had the same not exact story, but a lot of them have the same ailments and symptoms that I did, and said, oh my God, if you create something, please send it our way. And so then we recognized that, this is something that 50% of the population is experiencing.
Yeah.
And so we decided to create a product and try and heal ourselves first, and then realize that this was much bigger than just my journey.
Your story is similar to a lot of women. I mean, it's my story. It might be your story as well. You go to the doctor, you have period problems, you have, just fill in the blank if it's hormonally related, and they just say, take the pill. Yeah. Do you want a baby? No, take the pill.
And if you're not trying to get pregnant, none of it matters.
None of it matters. But that's the magic word, right? If you say, I think I want a baby, stop everything.
Didn't you
We will do lab tests.
Yeah, I lied.
She lied so she could get tested.
Yeah. And did it work?
I said that I was trying to get pregnant for a year and that I'm 33. So I looked it up. It's I have to say that I've been trying for a year for them to get testing. And then I was able to be referred to a reproductive specialist. Yeah.
And then what came out of that?
I just figured out that I'm still fertile. I just got tested and that, but not much. And even then I had to fight for it because my insurance was well, if you're not fertile, then we don't cover IVF. So then that would have been a whole different thing. But thankfully, I haven't been trying. I just don't have sex when I'm ovulating.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually something really common as well that women will say, I just lie to my doctor because I can't trust my doctor to have my best interest unless it's the interest of procreating. And I think it's such a disservice to constantly reduce us to our reproductive capacity and nothing else. And as if wanting to have a baby is the only, thing that needs to happen for you
your
to be
life
taken
to matter
seriously.
And your quality of life to matter is if you're trying to get pregnant. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious for you, did you start the pill because of symptoms, or was it you're of age, you should just do this?
Yeah, no, I started birth control without my parents knowing when I was 16 or 17. It was basically the first time that I had sex and knew that I didn't want to have an unplanned pregnancy. And so went in and it was kind of no questions asked. And they said, here is what you should have. And then, I think because of that, my period also never had a chance to regulate itself because I started so young. Because I think I got my period when I was close to 15. So not much time at all for my period to kind of figure out what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And then I got off it because I hit a point in my life where I realized that, all of these, I started asking questions basically, and I said,
how dare you?
What does this drug do, and what does this drug do, and is there a way for me not, because I was on Adderall, I was on birth control, and I was on Klonopin, which I was like, well, if you have anxiety, I don't really know that Adderall is good for you. But I just started going, is there a way that I could maybe manage these, because I started realizing all of the side effects of these things. And that's kind of what started the whole thing, was asking questions about what are these things doing to the inside of me.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting because you see that a lot when women are getting healthy and they're starting to know their body, and then it's something that I feel like we don't start questioning these things until we enter our late 20s because we're told these messages of periods are painful, that's normal. Being a woman's inherently awful. Your hormones make you crazy. And you don't know until you're older that wait, I can challenge these narratives. I can start to ask these questions. And it's usually when women are I'm starting to focus on these other parts of my life, and then they start to question birth control. And they're often met with resistance of how dare you question the greatest invention of women's time. You wouldn't even have a career if this didn't exist. And it's both can be true. We can be grateful for the medical advancement, and we can also say, this isn't working for me, I want something different. And also,
this is not the only way.
Yes.
This is not the only way. It is not necessarily the right way because you have a college degree.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a hot take right there. I think that is, I've had conversations with other podcast guests who are physicians, and we've talked about this, that as women who should rightly so challenge the paradigm of medicine because it has been gaslighting them, calling them hysterical. I mean, there's oodles of data that we die of heart attacks at higher rates than men because we're just too emotional. Like, it couldn't be real. Mm-hmm. And so as women are challenging this and starting to push back, medicine's response has been, I am the authority, you will listen to me, and trying to gain more control, which is I'm like, yeah, try that with a teenager, what's gonna happen? Like, it's not working out. Like, we have to come to a place where we respect that patient knows their body better than you're ever going to know it. They're coming to you for a partnership. You don't get to tell them what to do. You get to ask questions and offer possible solutions. And you have a lot of value in that, but you have to also respect the patient. And I think there's a lot of dogma around birth control where I know practitioners who are like, oh, well, if you're not going to take birth control, why are you even here? Like, just leave my practice. And it's like, why would you treat another human like that? I get that it's frustrating and hard to be a doctor, and also these are humans.
Yeah, it is. And that's, I am not saying that, like, I hate doctors. I think doctors are wonderful, and there's a lot of great need for doctors, but I think there are certain steps that you can take before just being put on the same thing that everyone else is on. And I think that's the frustration, right? And a lot of it, again, like, I just went into my general practitioner, and we talked about this, and she started a concierge service, which a lot of doctors are kind of having to do to get more time with patients, to be able to ask the questions and to be able to figure out the right answers, because a lot of times the way that the system is set up is come in, you have like 15 minutes, and then they have the next patient in. And so I think it is like, it's just the entire system is broken. It's not necessarily the doctor's fault.
I don't think anyone goes to medical school. There's this like narrative in the US where people just say, like, doctors are just like, they just want to be rich, they're greedy, that's why the way they are. Like, nobody goes to medical school being like, I just want to make a boatload of money and I don't care about patient outcomes at all. It's not like that. They get pushed into a system of having to see 30 plus patients a day. They don't have time in there. And then because they are humans, they become very dysregulated. They're completely in sympathetic overdrive. They end up with burnout. And then they interact with humans in the way that you would expect if someone's like that. So I do think I think if we wanted to point the finger, we got to start looking at insurance models. We need to start looking at, like, healthcare admin. Like, there's actually an upstream issue going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, Olivia, you've also had, like, it hasn't been smooth sailing when it comes to hormones for you as well.
I haven't always been on I've never been on birth control, but
you're such an anomaly.
Your mom is an angel.
She really is. It was just, never birth control. But my mom also had to deal with me growing up, where I thought being crazy and mental and fighting with my mom and having suicidal ideation at a very young age was normal. Like, but I didn't know that it was cyclical.
Yeah.
And then it was only until I got into therapy, did my therapist clock, like, I think this is cyclical. Like, when I talk to you other weeks, you seem totally fine. And, like, have you heard of PMDD? And I was like, what? What's PMDD? No. And then I looked at it, and I'm sure this happens for so many women. It's a light bulb moment. Like, you're just crying. You're like, I feel so seen. This is exactly what I'm dealing with. Like, sore breast pain. Like, you feel like you're itching at it, like crawling out of your skin. You don't recognize yourself. You break up with your partner once a month, like clockwork.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started tracking my cycle and working with therapists and rapid transformational therapy and trauma work and listening to you and, like, just, building Hummingway. And then once you start sharing your story with other people, which is what I loved about Hummingway, is we got to share our stories, then so many people just, like, it just comes in. Like, it is insane.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. They're like, I deal with this. Like, I had no idea I had PMDD, or I had no idea this is what happens to you when you come off hormonal birth control. Like, or thank you for making your product. Like, it cured or didn't cure my endometriosis, but it's the only thing that's helped with my endometriosis. Like, and so just, we very much feel like sharing your story is the first step in reclaiming your health, because you realize you're not alone. But it has not been, and smooth sailing. And even though I've done a lot of things to help it, I still, like, I just ovulated 2 days ago. And I don't know.
Here comes the luteal phase.
Oh, she's already here.
Yeah.
Like, I took, and we can talk about it, but I took a Zyrtec because it peaks at ovulation. Like I'll scratch my face and start to get really itchy. I know that a lot of my PMDD stuff is histamine related because I did the whole test with the antihistamine thing, and it helps a lot. And now I'm on this long journey of trying to figure out like how to reduce the histamine or lower my estrogen naturally. And it's like, how many more? I could sell my pee for millions of dollars because I'm on so many supplements. Like the low it's crazy. It's crazy. And it's like the low histamine diet is so restrictive. I'm on that.
It is not sustainable.
It's not sustainable.
Means,
All my favorite foods are high in histamine. I quit alcohol.
Yeah.
And that changed my life. Like that, I've been sober for 9 months now. And a lot of the outbursts, a lot of the dark thoughts, a lot of the like wanting to just, I don't know, whatever. Don't need to get that deep. Just like kind of went away for most of it.
Well, that's so powerful. And what is such a difficult part of PMDD is that alcohol feels like it can take the edge off of things, but then it pushes the estrogen, and then the estrogen pushes the histamine, and that becomes this really vicious cycle. For people who don't know what PMDD is, it is like PMS on steroids, but it hijacks at least half of your entire year. And I think that's what's important for people to understand, is that it's not just like, oh, you have a few off days. It's usually 10 to 14 days out of the month. That's 6 months out of the entire year that somebody doesn't want to be on this planet, that doesn't want to be around their loved ones, that can't enjoy their life. It's incredibly debilitating. And you mentioned before we started recording that you also have ADHD. Yeah. So we know that ADHD women, when they were surveyed, they report it's about roughly like 49% report having PMDD. Autistic women is closer, it's over 90% experience PMDD. And this is something that I actually have a whole ADHD podcast that I'll link to, talking about sleep, and I go a bit into the allopregnanolone and what's happening there. So it's not the same for everyone with PMDD. That for some people, when that progesterone ramps up, you get this allopregnanolone, and that should make you feel chilled out and calm. But for whatever reason, in the neurodivergent brain, it allegedly can happen in other brains as well, but I'm seeing such a connection with neurodivergent brains that I'm like, I am kind of convinced that the neurodivergent brain is more sensitive to this progesterone metabolite, and I want to see the studies that the progestin in the pill that they usually will use in women with PMDD, it is the neurodivergent women that I see so often have that paradoxical effect where they're like, I have ADHD and autism, and I was the person put on the pill that was like very scary, calling the suicide hotline at times, like very, very scary. And I look back at that and I'm like, all of that could have been a sign, but so many doctors are not, one, acknowledging that women can have ADHD and not making the connection around these things. So as you were saying with the low histamine diet, that's like so intense. I'm like, if you need to do it, try to just do it in the phase where like document yourself and be your N of one of like, when do I absolutely need to avoid leftovers? Because like, people don't know. I mean, isn't that the crazy thing?
What is it that you just basically can't have anything?
It feels that way.
It feels that way. Because lots of things that typically, like, we're healthy people. We live in LA. Apple cider vinegar, kombucha, sauerkraut, all these great things for your gut, lemon water, citrus fruits are high in histamine. All these things that I thought that I was doing good for my body, they're not super great for me. And I do notice, because like I've been doing the low histamine for like almost 3 months now, and I ate avocado hummus the other day, and I started to my mouth started closing up, and I felt extremely allergic to it. So it's like I do know that histamine is my thing, and that's kind of what I wanted to ask you. Is so many people were like, well, you have to lower your estrogen, and so then I eat all the cruciferous vegetables,
which then pushes histamine, right?
It's crazy.
Oh, man.
Being a woman is nuts. But it's like I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way, and I'm lucky that I'm tuned into my body and that I have Hummingway where I can constantly learn, and you are an amazing medical advisor, and I'm learning from you every single day, and so that's really grateful. But it's definitely not like a one size fits all PMDD. I even tried Lexapro. That bad idea, because it made my ADHD so much worse. That was horrible.
Yeah.
Didn't do much when I was on Lexapro. I was just a zombie. And so, yeah. But for other people that I know, like my friend was like, I took Lexapro, changed my life. I was like, great, I'm getting on Lexapro.
Yeah.
Like, let's go.
Yeah.
No, didn't work.
Well, and I think that's important for people to hear, because often whenever you are in the wellness space in any arena and you own a wellness company, people are like, well, then you're anti-pharmaceuticals. And it's like, no, I'm about the tool that works. Like, I just
I'm
need the
pro
tool.
asking questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is like, it's such a bizarre thing that's even controversial. Like, I'm pro-informed consent or pro-asking questions, and then they're like, oh, that translates to something bad. And I'm like, how are you gonna like label some women something new to keep them from? Well, you're gatekeeping in a new way. Like you're just rebranding your shame, and we're not having it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, the other thing is you were talking about the cruciferous vegetables, and then there's also vitamin C, which is so important for the DAO enzyme to clear the histamine. But then the citrus fruits can be like pushing histamine. So this is like, you know, you were saying you take Zyrtec. So I had a frozen embryo transfer, so it's an IVF cycle transfer, and I have to be on exogenous estrogen. Well, what's going to happen when I'm on exogenous estrogen? I have a history of PMDD. I already know I'm going to have histamine problems, so I'm on Claritin, 10 milligrams twice a day. And people are like, oh my God, but like long term, that can like have like, you know, side effects for like cognitive health. And I'm like, but if you see me when I'm rolling with high histamine, it's not so good.
It's not cute, no.
The
Yeah.
health up there is not good.
Yeah, so I'm like, sometimes it's a bring on the medication while you then are like, you know, bringing on the vitamin C, supporting the DAO enzyme, bringing in more quercetin into your diet, resolving like gut-related issues, but recognizing that like, when you're neurodivergent, it's such an extra layer of the default of the nervous system is dysregulated. The default of the immune system is dysregulated. The default of the gut is to be dysregulated. And so you have to really piece all of that together and look at, and that's, I think, the problem is that we're not studying neurodivergent women. And so we already have this cookie cutter approach to women as it is. And then we just acted like neurodivergent women never existed. And we don't, and then we've got so much, focus on like, how do we prevent and cure and never make autism happen? And it's like, but what about the autistic woman who's aging right now? Like, what about the autistic woman going through PMDD? Like, could we get a little funding over here to like help some women out?
100%. And I feel like I've been masking my whole life. Like, I had no idea that I was neurodivergent. I just existed in this world that just doesn't feel like designed for me, or I feel like an alien half of the month. Yeah, it's frustrating for sure.
When I got assessed, I actually like broke down on my assessment and crying the moment that like I realized and I said the words that like I feel like everybody's playing the game of life and they got the rule book and I'm constantly losing because I never was told how to play the game. And I just like started crying and I was like, oh my God. And then when I got my diagnosis, I was like, everything makes so much sense about myself. My husband was like, I don't even think you need the diagnosis. I think it's pretty obvious what's going on. And I was like, and then when I got the diagnosis, he was like, yeah, it tracks. Yeah. Like we knew that. And I was like, I just needed to like know that it wasn't me being like lazy or not enough or like I really was just totally weird. It's like, yeah, like you got the Android operating system and everybody has the ultra intuitive Apple operating system and you're trying to figure out how do you send texts and like do all
they're all
that.
green.
I know, they're all green. So I want to talk about how Hummingway is different because one criticism that has definitely come out of the pandemic is that investors, the VC world got crazy on women's health because they were like, ka-ching. We have an opportunity to capitalize on women's pain. There's an unmet need. What are you guys doing differently?
I think the education proponent to it is really important to us, is that we decided early on that, yes, we do want to create products and we do want our company to be sustainable, but we also want to provide all the education possible because I think because of what you guys were talking about earlier, like even if there's not a cure for it, or even if you don't know how to manage it yet, just understanding and feeling seen is really important. And so that to us was definitely something that was primary, and I think that makes us different than a lot of companies.
Yeah, 100%. Also, we're making products that actually work. Like, to be fair, our main hero product, the Cycle Soother patch, it has CBD, ginger, lemongrass, menthol, vitamin E, and black pepper. CBD, you can't sell it on TikTok. You can't sell it on Amazon. You can't sell it in Target. You can't sell it in a lot of places. And we've had investors be like,
We've gotten asked a lot.
take the CBD out. And we're like,
It'll
well,
be fine.
Yeah, we're not going to sell you a patch with menthol for women that have endometriosis or women that are in excruciating pain, because it's not going to work in the way that our patch works. You know, CBD does a very similar thing that NSAIDs do, where it stops or inhibits like the excess production of prostaglandins, and you probably can explain what prostaglandins are way better than I can. But it helps so many people. They put it on, and we chose a patch because it's one of the most bioavailable ways to get ingredients into your skin. We tried making a gummy, and gummies probably would have got us in all the Target stores. But gummies, you can't even put enough ingredients for it to be effective. We don't want to just put buzzwords like ashwagandha and dong quai like on the front of our thing branded like it's pink, and then be like, here girlies, take this, and like then we're
That's just what they need. Something else that doesn't work.
We don't need more cane sugar. So it's really important for us and like to make products that actually work, that take a lot of R&D, that, you know, we work with different formulators and manufacturers. Like, everyone we work with are like women that like are down for our mission, and it's just like really important for us to stay true to what we're building and what our intention was to begin with.
Yeah, and your Cycle Soother patches are pretty amazing, I have to say, because it was going through IVF that then I got rid of my period pain. Like, my teenage years were behind me, and then going through stimulation that caused the endometriosis lesions to grow, and I started having incredibly painful periods. And it's something that I wish reproductive endocrinologists post-egg retrieval would use these transdermal patches with women, because they're like, everything in women's health, take NSAIDs. And you're like, no, but I'm telling you, I can't get out of bed right now. I'm in so much pain. Like, I remember my third egg retrieval, the flare was so bad, and my doctor was like, take oral NSAIDs and then take the sublingual NSAIDs and like all, and I'm like, you want to know what's going to happen? The gastritis is going to come, then the vomiting up my food, because like I have such bad reflux. Like, I already know this pattern, and I used the Cycle Soother patches, and I was like, thank God for this. And I think that, you know, it has the utility of like helping with period pain. It does help with endometriosis, but I'm also like, there's so many other pelvic pain conditions as well where this has utility. What made you guys decide to go the transdermal patch route rather than like maybe a roll-on stick or oral supplements?
It's the most effective. It's the most bioavailable, and we could get the most amount of ingredients in our patch.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. I mean, I think because we did get a lot of advice to make it fancy and to make it cute and to make it this, and we both decided like this isn't going to be something that's groundbreaking. Like, we're not going to say like we have this like incredible ingredient that's just going to fix everything. Like, we just wanted to put things that we knew worked, and we just wanted a delivery method that we knew worked.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big thing that you see, especially as you were talking about TikTok marketing. People like chase the one trademarked ingredient so they can make like the claims about all of these things, and then, you know, they get in trouble and that video like goes away immediately. Yeah. And I appreciate the honesty about, and the fact that you're like, I want to make something that works, that actually helps women. Have you guys been faced with criticism? Because I feel like every time an innovation comes out in the women's health space to help them, especially there's doctors who are like, but you have the pill, you have ibuprofen, there's Midol, why fix it? It's not broken.
Our answer to that always is that we are creating something that is actually going to be non-toxic and that actually isn't going to have an adverse effect. And there are a lot of people now that don't want to take this pill and they want a different option. And so that's what we're here for. And again, we're not saying if you want to take NSAIDs and you want to take the pill, by all means go do that. We're not going to chastise you for that in the way that I feel like people get chastised for wanting to do something that's good for their body.
Well, and also for women with endometriosis, like we all know, we get offered the pill all the time and it barely touches the pain in most people. And doctors are still perpetuating the myth that like it's going to slow the progression of your endometriosis. No, it doesn't. There's no studies to actually like back up, but like tell me more about your evidence-based medicine claims. Like you're perpetuating these myths that ultimately lead to women, you know, we talked about PMDD with women with endometriosis. sometimes that's 2 to 3 weeks of their life.
Oh,
So
yeah.
now we're talking 9 months out of the year that they're debilitated.
Yeah, it's the messages that we get from people on Instagram or on TikTok or on via email about how our product changed their life. Like, there's not a lot of other companies out there where you're getting messages like that, like long paragraphs where people are just like, nothing has worked for me my entire life. Like, no one has ever even paid attention to my pain. Like, your product completely changed my life. And I feel like that's why we keep doing it. And we don't really have many haters at all.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, we don't
We
have
also
haters.
don't claim, like, it's really wonderful to get these messages, and it is, like, it does make you tear up, but we still don't go out there going, we have the fix-all, and this is going to work better than everything else. Like, we're also very transparent about the fact that everyone's body reacts differently, and so this may work wonders for you, and it may not, right? Thankfully, we've gotten overwhelmingly positive responses, but I think, again, like, we're not out here trying to trick anyone or to tell anyone that it's something that it's not. We just know that it has been shown to be really effective.
Yeah, I also think that with everything with healing as women, it's not just it's not like a one pill or one patch is going to fix it all. It's like, if you're drinking constantly or you're smoking cigs and eating burgers and then you're
That's
like,
where the education provider comes into
exactly.
it.
And you're going to put a patch on and you think the patch is going to make all of your period pain go away. It's like, no, babe, like, your body's so inflamed from all the other things you're doing. And it's like, is your nutrition good? Like, are you moving to your cycle? Like, that's why we were like, we can't just give them a patch and be like, hey, you're good on your own. That's why we have you, and, you know, we do interviews, and you write for our the regular, like, our education platform and so many things like that, because you need both.
Well, I think honest and ethical marketing is so refreshing. However, it can hinder a company's growth. How do your investors ever be like, we want you to get out there and, like, do more of this or do more of that, or are they pretty much on board with the mission as well?
Yeah, I think most everyone who invested in the company was very behind the mission, and we were very honest about that from the jump. I feel like my husband, your brother, sometimes would be like, just do this, and, like, you could do this, and she and I were both just like, no, we're not going to pretend again that we're something that we're not, and this is what we want to be. And so the people who invested in the company are very much behind that. There certainly have been really helpful in trying to find ways to help us expand, but there also is a limitation to CBD, which is really unfortunate, because it is just one of those things that we're not willing to take out of the pouch because it's part of what makes it so effective.
Yeah. Do you think legislation may change in the future? Because that's one of the biggest barriers, is that, I mean, we need, like, politician education. It's actually, like, wild to me that in 2025, we still have men who are woefully illiterate about women's bodies and about, you know, products like CBD, and yet they're still out there allowed to make laws and vote that affects us all.
Oh, yeah. It's terrifying. I think what's happening right now is very scary. So unfortunately, no, I don't see that there's going to be, like, a really big change in the near future under our current president.
Yeah. I want to talk about how you landed on the formulation, though. So you decided to include CBD, and you've talked about that as kind of being, like, one of the winning ingredients, but that's not all that's in the patch.
Yeah, so a lot of the other ingredients in the patch have naturally occurring terpenes that work with the CBD to help it either enhance the effects, or, for example, like black pepper actually helps CBD get through the dermis layer of the skin faster. Because what we wanted is, again, like with holistic medicine, it takes a while for things to work.
Yeah.
And women and menstruators are so used to just popping a Midol and feeling kind of better, even though Midol, I'm pretty sure, was, like, designed for men and was, like, a drug for hiccups. So I don't really know how it really helps women's cramps. But so we wanted to make the patch, like, work quite quickly. And again, everyone's different, but, like, there's so many people that are like, I put the patch on and feel better in my body. It's also, like, a nice act where you feel like you're placing it on your body and you're kind of being in tune with your body and you're giving it a second, versus so many menstruators are just told to, like, take a Midol that, like, we used to have caffeine and just, like, move on with your day and just, like, push through your period and just go to work. And it's not really like that. Like, we want to be more in touch with our bodies and slow down a little bit and be more reflective and listen to, like, what our body's calling for. And so I think with the patch, like, that's a nice addition to it where it feels like you're doing something for yourself. We tried so many different things. We didn't want to necessarily do CBD. Like at one point
Tourmaline?
Yeah, we did tourmaline and it left like black marks all over your body because we were trying to make like a heat patch. Magnesium we tried, but then the molecules were too big. We did a lot of work, and then we finally found this really great formulator who works in women's health and also works with CBD, and she started nano-emulsifying the CBD and the other ingredients together. And typically when you do nano-emulsified CBD, it's only in drinks, because we talked to so many people who are like, yeah, you can only nano-emulsify CBD in like a water molecule and like put it in a drink. But she was able to do it. And once she did that, I feel like that was the game changer.
They really started working.
They really started working.
God, we went through how many iterations?
I don't know, like 30 something. Yeah, it was wild.
A lot.
Do you guys have photos of the black like bellies?
Probably,
like,
yeah. We could look back.
That definitely needs to go on your social media.
Or we're like, how far? Because we're like, what? But if it works, and we're like, no, this is just too far.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it didn't work nearly as well as the CBD does anyway. But yeah, we went through a lot of different iterations.
Have there been like any stories that you've received from social media or customers that you're like, okay, that even blew our mind. Like we didn't expect that.
I think endometriosis. We didn't think that it was going to help so many people with endometriosis. Like
to that degree.
This girl wrote me like a paragraph, and she's an influencer, and she's like, I never talk about my endometriosis, and my mom struggled with it, and I struggle with it, but this product changed my life. It's the only thing that's ever helped, because painkillers don't help me. Like, can you send me some product, and I'm going to start talking about it. And I think that's what's really cool is we also just did an event with Core Power for Endometriosis Awareness Month yesterday, and the woman running the class had endometriosis, got the surgery, and she was like, you know what? I just need to keep talking about this and like spreading the word. And so I think it's really great that a lot of people are just talking about it more. And the discovery of the patch and it helping them shows them that they don't have to be in this pain all the time. And like to open up about it to help others. And I think that's been really nice.
Yeah, I think it's great to have a tool for the endometriosis community, because while excision surgery is really like the gold standard if you need it, not everybody needs it. There aren't surgeons everywhere. There's not great health care to cover the surgery. There's a lot of barriers to getting that, and that's why I love what you're doing, and I'm a big proponent of like, we have to give women the tools to get out of pain now. I think about Canadian women, because I'm always getting messages from them where they're like, it's 6 months to see a gynecologist. When I see them, they blow me off. So it's 6 months to see the next gynecologist, and maybe they're like, yeah, we think it might be endometriosis, but now you have 2 years before you're actually gonna be able to have surgery. And it's like, that's 3 years of someone's life gone. So how can we start giving them tools now to start taking back their life? Because the majority of things, even if you have excision surgery, it's still work on your part to heal from that. There's a whole recovery. Like I had it 3 months ago. I'm still in pelvic floor PT. I'll probably be there for another 9 months because someone was in my pelvis, things got disrupted, and I want to, one, not have the trigger pain that you can get from that, but also I have to work on recovering all of this. This is a significant surgery, but I think anytime it's women's health surgery, like we think about C-sections, it's very flippant of like, yeah, get up, keep going.
It's insane.
Yeah. And it's almost like, you said something earlier and it really spurred a thought in me of like, pushing through your period. We've been taught that our period is a weakness, and if you pause for your period, you're weaker, you're lesser than men, and you have less value. What do you say to that?
Well, we are responsible for procreating. So it's very important. I feel like it's something that men are a little bit afraid of, but I think that we're finding now that it's not a weakness at all. Actually, your menstrual blood tells you such a vast amount about our overall health that it's really a blessing. And I know because we're so conditioned to believe otherwise, it's hard to wrap your head around that. But if we actually lean into it, like there is so much power in your menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a vital sign. It's the 5th vital sign, right?
Yeah.
Listen to it.
Can we get that to be embraced by everybody? Because let's be real.
Use it instead of fearing it and shunning it,
Well, I think a lot of us are taught, sometimes it's by our own mothers, but taught by society as a whole that like our period is something to be ashamed of, not to talk about. I've shared that. I think I was like in my mid-30s when I decided consciously I'd stop smuggling tampons up my sleeve when I go to the bathroom. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, just put the tampon on the table. Like, you have your period. Like, it's a tampon. Like, it's cleaner than a lot of stuff that was probably like, I was just thinking this time that I was in the cafe with like my in-laws, and I was just like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. And I was like, how is this the bravest thing I'm doing? Like, my life right now is just to be like, I'm gonna walk to the bathroom with a tampon in my hand and not hide it right now. Yeah. And I think, and I think, you know, someone from a younger generation might be listening to this being like, that's so silly. I was indoctrinated. So I think
it's different now.
We've come a long way, but I still think there's a lot of period stigma. I think there's a lot that is still being placed on women unfairly about their bodies. How do you see your roles at Hummingway in helping change that conversation and move things forward?
I think doing things like this, being as public as possible, showing people that it's okay to talk about these things. I think not specifically Hummingway, but the encouragement to talk to your daughters about these things from a young age. Like, my daughter knows, and she's 2.5. She's like, oh, you're on your period? That's your tampon? Like, you know, she's being educated about this stuff from the ground up so that there isn't this stigma surrounding it. I think, you know, the next generation is how we change this, because we're not able to change what happened to us and how we were raised. But I think we have a lot of power to be able to speak up. And the more people that speak up, the less it's going to be stigmatized. There will be a pushback, right? But but I think it's community.
Yeah, it is community for sure.
Yeah.
Like, that's our number one focus, is building a strong community of women who then can feel uplifted and share their stories with other people.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I think that is the way forward, is that we just normalize the conversations that are normal. I had someone just last night that I was talking, she's like, how far along are you? And I was like, I'm 5 weeks pregnant. And she's like, you're telling people? And I'm like, you know, the thing I realized is not telling people early about pregnancy, not talking to people about my period, all of these things were never for me. They were for other people's comfort. And it was silencing me so that they could stay comfortable. And I've just decided we're not doing that anymore. Like, if, you know, I just have very much the mindset too of like, I'm not gonna let the fear of the future rob me of the joy of this moment. And I'm just gonna have it and I'm gonna share it with people. And if things don't work out the way that I wanted them to, like, why should I have to go that alone? Because we're told not to talk about these things.
Yeah, that's really beautiful and brave. And I think, to your point, like, it is, we found with Hummingway, like, as soon as you open up about this, like, no one is saying, oh my God, I can't believe you said that. Everyone is going, oh my God, you too?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and it's, and oh, I'm experiencing this. And then another person chimes in and it creates this beautiful movement. And it's similar with pregnancies and miscarriages. You find that, because I had a miscarriage and really kept it to myself at first. And I don't know that I've really like publicly spoken about it, but finally, you know, started telling people, and then realized that like everyone around me had a miscarriage.
Yeah.
You know, and I could talk to people about what I was feeling, because it's sometimes hard. My husband is very supportive, but because he didn't go through it the same way, and because it was a little earlier on too, I don't think he had formed that connection. You know, it was tough, because I was like, I don't know how to explain to you what I'm going through.
Yeah.
But other women who have gone through it, it was such a safe space. So yeah, I think it's great to talk about all that.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate you sharing that, because one of the things that's coming through with what you guys are doing in Hummingway is helping women not feel so isolated and alone. And I think with miscarriages, like when I had my first miscarriage, no matter what I knew as a doctor, I felt like I'm the only one. I was isolated. I was the only one that going through that in that moment. And then, you know, as I was sharing in a conversation with someone recently, like, if you think about how inefficient reproduction is as a human, every time we try to get pregnant, we have like 25% odds, and then roughly 50% it won't work out even if you do get pregnant. That's a lot of women who've all been thinking they're alone and the only one. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
And it's my fault. Like what you said, the whole fact of like, oh my God, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And now you're coming to find out too, like, I'm curious your take on this, but, you know, we're starting to see all this stuff come out now about like, oh, well, actually, like, a lot of it has to do with the sperm.
Yeah.
Versus it being solely on the women's head. And oh, if you're experiencing morning sickness, or if you have a miscarriage, or there's some kind of anomaly, like, a lot of times it is connected to the sperm versus it being the woman's fault.
Absolutely. I'll link some episodes with some reproductive endocrinologists who talk about exactly that, like how problematic that fertility is always looking. And they're like, it's not the reproductive endocrinologist, it's generally the OB-GYN who's like, you're broken, something's wrong with you, we have to fix you, and you're their patient. So like you get that, except that there's 50% of the genetic contributor over here that's being completely neglected. And so we do know it can affect the pregnancy, it can affect miscarriage rate, it can affect the health of the pregnancy and fetal outcomes. It's super important. It's so interesting too because a study just came out on bacterial vaginosis, which forever, that is something that men have made fun of women for. You have a fish odor down there. And the study saying, this is possibly sexually transmitted. So it looks like it's an STI.
It is, 100%.
And, yeah.
It only comes when I have sex with a new partner.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, semen does disrupt your pH, and your period blood can disrupt your pH. So there's other things that contribute to BV, but to see the pushback of people who've been like, you can't call it an STI because like there's other ways that you can get it. I'm like, you can get Hep B other ways, like you can get these infections other ways, but when it's an STI, that means that the doctor now can treat your partner, and that's so important. And as I was trying to navigate this conversation and explain it to people, people are like, no, but stigma and da-da-da-da. I'm like, okay, BV is associated with increased risk of miscarriage. So if her partner keeps passing it back to her and she's pregnant, and the doctor, until it's called an STI, can't actually prescribe to that male partner unseen, you have to do a physical exam. Legally, they're not covered. But as soon as it's classified as STI, they can protect him, but also baby as well. Like these have much larger implications. So it is very nuanced in, what the things that can lead to miscarriage. And yet I think we always come back to like, it's me, I'm broken, because those are the messages that we've been given in society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would it be called if men have it? It can't be called BV, right?
Right?
That would mean they have vaginas.
Vagina, right? I mean, they would just call it usually the organism that's overgrowing, the Gardnerella overgrowth. But it's just very interesting. The other thing is that for years I've had patients say, like, that's how I knew he was cheating. I got BV and I knew he was cheating. And I'm like, women feel very vindicated in this moment, and the bad behaving men in my comments who were like, no, it's because of her hygiene. I was like, the vagina handles itself, sir. Okay, like stop embarrassing yourself, get a book so you don't make these kinds of comments and like read something. Like, but to just like to see this discourse like go back and forth around this, but I'm like, it's not necessarily means that he's cheating, but there's women who are like, no, I knew this to be true about my body. And I'm like, to see a study that says he could have picked it up somewhere else and brought it to you, like I'm like always inclined to believe a woman and just say, I don't have any evidence to support this. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. Okay. Like if you caught him cheating, but
that's
now
what your gut's saying.
But now to see this study, I'm like, well, there's some air of truth in that. That doesn't mean it's true for everyone in every situation, but yeah, it's interesting how science evolves and how people will be so like viscerally opposed to like getting new information and things that don't fit their narrative.
Wow, that's fascinating.
I'm curious, at any point in, because you went to investors, because this was not an easy or cheap product to develop, and you went through all of these iterations, so you needed to get investors for this. Were there investors who were like, this is too taboo, this is never going to work?
Yeah, not the ones that invested.
Not the ones that invested.
Obviously not. No. I was the ones that invested in you, they like had the vision. But I'm just wondering if there was like, the brosphere where they were like, no, this is weird. Women don't have these problems.
Yeah, 100%. Especially since we launched in 2021, and so when we were raising, like truly, there was like you and Elisa Vitti talking about women's health. Like there was nobody else.
Like way back in the day, right?
Like, and now because of TikTok and like social media, it's been like this boom, which is amazing. So I think obviously a lot of men have gotten way used to like hearing the word period, but there were definitely VCs that
they're uncomfortable.
Cringe at the word period, cringe at the blood. And even what was frustrating is a lot of older women that we pitched to who, you know, have money and they're VCs, they're like, how has this helped? Like, because it didn't help them. Because in menopause, like, so it definitely, the pitches were interesting for quite a while. But then we eventually found investors that like really understood. Like Liz Cambridge, she's a basketball player. She was in the WNBA. This patch changed her life. And so it helped her so much. And so she became an investor. And like, those are the type of people that we have around us.
What's something that you wish you would have known growing up about your hormones in your body that you're now trying to share with women everywhere?
I just think that that you have phases of your menstrual cycle and that they affect your mood and they affect your overall, they affect everything about your productivity and how social you are, and that there can be imbalances and your estrogen and progesterone. Like I all of these things were so foreign to me, and so I think it would have been wonderful to have that introduced to me. You know, the same way that we learn 7 days in the week. Like, I think you should learn that you have a menstrual cycle with different phases. I also think it would have been really helpful to know when I could get pregnant.
Oh,
and
yeah.
when I could not get pregnant.
Instead of just any day of the month, you better watch yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Or, like, maybe just don't have sex these couple of days. I actually just had a conversation with someone, and they said, do you want another baby? And I said, oh, not right now. And they were like, oh, you're on the pill. And I said, oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is a woman in her, in her 50s, and she's like, well, what are you doing? Like, you're gonna get pregnant. Like, you're not, do you have a diaphragm? Do you do this? And I said, oh, no, I'm married. And we had this whole thing, and I just kind of looked at her, and she goes, why are you looking at me like I'm crazy? And I said, well, it's not like I can get pregnant every day out of the month, and I know when I'm ovulating, and I'm pretty aware of these things. And she was like, what do you mean? And it was just kind of mind-blowing to me, you know, that she didn't, which I guess, I don't know why I expected it, because especially my generation, especially a generation above me, like, we're kind of raised similarly, where like you just don't have information. But it was mind-boggling to me, where I was like, wait, do you know that there's a certain amount of days, like, what is it, 4 days out of the week or month, you can really get pregnant? Actually, if you want to talk about that, I would love to put that clip on my social media so that we can make other people aware. But even like the phases of the cycle, like, she just didn't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think teaching our children those things is really important.
Yeah, we ovulate one day. We have 24 hours for our egg and sperm to meet in the fallopian tube, and that's it. If it doesn't happen in the 24 hours, you're not getting pregnant. So I think that's always a heartbreaking part for women who are trying to get pregnant. They're feeling like, I'm failing. Why can't I get pregnant? It's like, it has to be a certain day of the month. And then sperm, I like to call them loiterers. There's like loitering, like waiting for her to come out the building. They can be around for 3 to 5 days. Natural Cycles has actually been really good with their data collection and doing studies, and what they have found is that most sperm aren't going to make it more than 3 days. If you're trying to get pregnant, it's really important data to have, because it's 3 days before you ovulate and the day of are the key days to have sex to try to conceive. And if you really don't want to get pregnant, you err on the 5 days before ovulation in case somebody's taking their zinc, selenium, vitamin C, and they're like got really strong swimmers. Plus, your own uterine environment keeps them alive and nurtures them, and is like, okay, you can hang out for a few days. It's like going, you know, like they're loitering, waiting for the, like, you know, daughter to come out of the house, and grandma's like, I'll give you some cookies while you're waiting. It's okay. Like, some cookies. Yeah, so there is that fertile window. And I remember when I learned about it, and I was sitting in medical school, and I was like, what the hell am I doing taking this pill every single day? And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not even sexually active. And like, what is happening in my life right now? Like, what, and who am I if I'm not on this? And like, it was just this, I just remember it's like a moment where the camera like pans in, like she's having all these epiphanies, and like the map is happening. You know, and I'm like, what? And I was like, I'm gonna stop this. I think life will be fine. And then I was like in hell. I was like, I have cystic acne, and like, and I don't have my period, and what's wrong with me? And like, oh, it's like such a mess. And I was like, man, if we could just stop women from having to go through that, that would be really fantastic.
Oh, I have a question for you. Sorry, now I'm in question mode. Because I recently, although like I'm kind of, I told you, I think I might have SIBO and I have all this stuff going on, so maybe that's it. But I recently had like where I was like, oh, I started my period a couple of days early, but it was like very light, like not like I wiped and was like, oh, there's like a little something. But then I didn't, but then I was like a day late on my period. And I was like, wait, what is that?
Yeah.
Like what just happened?
Well, you were just saying that because you had surgery prior, right? And that's what you think maybe was the impetus to developing SIBO. Surgery is a stressor, and any kind of stressor can throw off our cycle. And so sometimes we won't ovulate, or sometimes we ovulate, and the corpus luteum, which is that little structure left behind that should produce progesterone, is like, I'm trying, but I can't, and I'm trying, but I can't. And so sometimes that, like, I have spotting is like a bit of that progesterone failure. Like, we sometimes think about like estrogen is laying the bricks down of the uterine lining, and progesterone's the mortar that comes in there. And so if that mortar's starting to go, well, then a brick is going to slip. Like, that's kind of the analogy I use. And so we can definitely see that. It sometimes happens when women travel. So we're all have different barometers in terms of stress. And so sometimes just changing time zones, someone will start having spotting, and they're like, why is my period coming early? Because the stressor of that event told your reproductive system environment's not safe, and your body's saying like, well, survival is the primary goal and reproductive health is secondary to that. Let's make sure we're surviving, and it's dangerous to be pregnant, so we're gonna stop that from happening.
Just kind of magical.
Yeah, it is really cool. Like, I think often women see this whole like, oh, I'm so sensitive to environmental stressors and everything, and like that's problematic. Yes, you're so in tune. Like, that is why tribes that survived had medicine women, had women who were intuitive, like feeding back. Like, it's also like you look at tribes that were like, when women were on their period, they were like, go into this tent, download the sacred information, like help support us. And then we got so far away from that, like where they're just like, ew, icky, go into the tent because you're dirty. And like, it's like, no. Like, there's like great things happening during this time. It's also, I think, why there is so much a reclaiming of menopause right now, because that used to be our wise women, right? And it's interesting to see from the evolutionary perspective how they talk about the reason why women went into menopause is so they were no longer that biological reproductive threat to the younger women. They didn't have to compete, they got to support them. Wow. And so they actually supported the tribe, and how important that was to have the grandmothers. And I think society took that and twisted that of like, making women feel like they're, again, lesser in some way because they're not, have reproductive capacity. And like, we're seeing this reclaiming of menopause of like, no, this is like a new season. And like, and to realize that every season of our life and every season and phase of our menstrual cycle like has power and utility.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. And then
Are we doing the question part now?
Maybe. I just have one.
You can't come and see you and not have
it's like free advice. Just with someone that has PMDD, like for me, getting pregnant, that kind of sounds scary. Then postpartum sounds scary, and menopause also sounds scary.
Yeah.
Because PMDD is already so insane, and I worry that like I'm just now at 33 kind of have it under control. Yeah. And then now I kind of want to have kids soon, but that frightens me because that's when there's a lot of progesterone. And then the postpartum, like, will I even survive that?
Yeah. So what's interesting about pregnancy is that we're not running estradiol, we're running estriol. And that's a really weak estrogen compared to estradiol. And so in cases of PMDD, a lot of times we'll see symptoms go away and moods are fine through pregnancy. ADHD can be a little more problematic, especially in the first trimester, because as progesterone rises, estrogen starts to take a back seat. And as estrogen takes a back seat, so does dopamine, so does serotonin. And so it's something that I was actually, I just had someone on the podcast hasn't announced her pregnancy yet. And we were talking about all of this. And she was talking about, the phases of your cycle. And the luteal phase, you got to go internal. And I'm like, have you framed yet that your first trimester is an extension of your luteal phase? You are going internal. You are laying down every single system of the body of a human. You're building a placenta. Like, this is internal work. And so when you think like, I'm failing, I'm not enough because I'm not as productive, I don't have so much energy, I can't lift weights, I can't do all of that. You're not supposed to. It's an extension of that internal season. And then second trimester comes and you're very external, like you're building your community, you're doing, from that like ancestral perspective, but things switch at that phase. Now, when you get into postpartum, what is really important, it's very important to have someone monitoring your mood, also monitoring thyroid health. So being neurodivergent, autoimmune disease is par for the course, and thyroid disease is like the most common that we'll see postpartum. And it starts with this, like, I feel great. I have tons of energy. I actually don't need to sleep. Like, I'm up, go, 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 go. And now, like, I'm also having kind of heart palpitations and I'm feeling kind of anxious, and now I'm not starting to sleep. And then it slides into I'm depressed, I'm lethargic, I'm losing my breast milk. And that's a sign of postpartum thyroiditis that we're seeing going on.
I've never heard of that.
That has to be kept on track sometime. So what is really cool about postpartum is it's a window into your menopause experience. And so you can actually see, what was this like for you?
Oh, God.
This is what's like possibly coming later. No, but if you, she just melted in the chair. But if you know this, then you can plan for this. So it's very interesting because, I tried 2 months of Lupron for my endo. I regret that. It was a bad decision, but I am glad that I went through it, because the way I became absolutely depressed, dysregulated, like had all these problems. One of the saviors for me was saffron. Bringing in like 30 milligrams of saffron was like
a day.
A game changer for my mood. So I was like, I need that in menopause, like absolutely going to be on track. So saffron is something that is pretty good in the research. When SSRIs fail, saffron's a pretty good one to bring in. And so I'm looking now at postpartum where I'm like, I don't have as many mood issues, but the last time I was postpartum, I was like writing a book with a baby on the front of me. And I have this habit to like hyper focus and throw myself into work. So even if I was having mood symptoms, I'm like, I'm not always so present for it. Like I kind of have issues with that. I gotta work on that. But I am looking at like, well, I may want to leverage saffron. I know I do good with oral micronized progesterone. So once your milk comes in, oral micronized progesterone can help sometimes with the sleep, with the anxiety. But this is the thing to know postpartum and in menopause, perimenopause, if you have PMDD. So if we, and you're neurodivergent, if we start you in perimenopause on progesterone, we're gonna start with like 25 to 50 milligrams. The mistake providers make is they'll hit you with 1 to 200 milligrams. That can work wonderful. It works wonderful for the neurotypical brain, but for the PMDD brain or the neurodivergent brain, it can sometimes be too much too quick, and it floods that allopregnanolone. And that is something that I'm like very passionate talking about, because I'm like, it's great, everybody's jumping on bioidentical hormones. I've been prescribing these for like over 10 years. However, there's this whole entire population that has a paradoxical effect. And so, and then sometimes providers are like, oh, well, let's cycle it. But sometimes with PMDD, it's actually like, keep it steady. Just keep it steady throughout the month. Like she's in perimenopause, her cycles are becoming irregular. 25 milligrams oral is not usually gonna like inhibit a cycle or do anything, and you just keep those things steady. And then as we were talking about the antihistamines, so taking oral quercetin, drinking lots of nettle tea, if you can eat stinging nettles, but like cook them because they'll mess you up. Those kinds of things can be really helpful and adjunct. I always, when I get into my second trimester, I have a pregnancy tea I drink, and it has lots of nettles in it. So I'm doing that already as a way to like, it's nutritive, but it also supports that entire histamine pathway. And then it's like, but if things are starting to get off, like we know antihistamines can work. And we see this, it's interesting because reproductive endocrinologists will talk about with women with endometriosis, using the antihistamines, which I see a lot of endo in the neurodivergent community as well, but actually using both like something like Zyrtec and Claritin, but also using an H2 blocker, which you usually think for like stomach acid issues, and partnering those together to like dampen.
Like a Pepsid AC.
So to dampen the histamine response. Well, you work on that because what happens postpartum is that you were writing in this. Let me do this. Okay, TH1, TH2. TH1, viruses, bacteria, they don't belong there, kill them. TH2 should be your parasites, but we don't get enough of them, so we do asthma, allergies, eczema. We switch in pregnancy to TH2 dominance because what's baby? It doesn't belong there, not you, genetically distinct, and so you have that TH2 dominance. When you deliver that placenta, your hormones are starting to switch, and then here comes TH1, and so we can see like, here comes the immune system, and now we're starting to have like this flare of symptoms. Wow. And that doesn't have to be forever. That can be like a temporary thing. So, and then there's of course all of the lifestyle stuff that we can talk about, like diet, lifestyle. You have to be sleeping postpartum. We have to sleep. Like, why are we not getting those Korean?
That was my issue.
Why don't we get those Korean hotels? Like,
that's
why don't
mine
we have
so
those?
Yeah. How do you sleep if you don't have help?
Yeah,
well, that's the thing. We should.
Yeah.
We don't.
But so many people don't.
So many people don't.
Like, I have a friend whose husband goes on tour. So
Oh
not
my
only
God.
does she's just alone.
Yeah.
And no money for a nanny. So like, how does that even?
Yeah. I was, I think, like 3 weeks postpartum, and my husband had the opportunity to go to London and speak at like Google and like give a keynote and all this stuff. And I was like, of course you're gonna do this. And I remember being so exhausted in the week he was done that I was walking down the stairs and I literally like collapsed on the stairs. I was like laying on the wall, like trying to go
I'm here
down.
now.
And I was like, oh my God. So like, I absolutely feel that, and I sympathize for that. We need legislation to change in the United States for women. We need maternity leave. We look at the countries that have great outcomes, lower levels of postpartum depression among women. They have nurses, doulas, people who come in afterward, who are coming to the house checking on you. It's absolute bullshit that you have a baby and then you need to take a baby to go get checked up on to a doctor's office and then you have to leave and get checked. Like, why don't we have a system where people can come to us? Other countries have figured this out. So, it's always so easy, right, to be like, you have to sleep. And then it's like, but how? And that is something that I feel like when you're pregnant, plan the postpartum strategy. So my first book is on postpartum health, and I wrote it because I was like, no one thinks about this.
Yeah.
They think about getting pregnant and they think about their pregnancy the whole time, but the hardest part is postpartum, and we have to plan our postpartum more seriously than we're planning our birth, because you have control over postpartum and birth you do not. And I say that as somebody who has always had like really nice ideas about what's going to happen, and then it actually happens and I'm like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing.
Yep. Definitely. Yeah, it is really hard, and to your point, it's infuriating when you see these other countries that, I mean, great for them, but when you see kind of what we put our bodies through and what happens and the amount of repair that we actually need, and the like 2 weeks that people actually get to have is crazy.
Well, there was a friend of mine who was posting online about how much hate she got for being pregnant in her OB-GYN residency from other OB-GYNs, and how she only got 4 weeks off, and people acted like it was ridiculous that she would ever want more. And I was like, and that's the part of the healthcare system that's caring for pregnant women. Like, and why are they acting like that? Because they're being taught that. And like, again, it comes to like, there's all these upstream issues. So like, and I think so often it's really easy to hate on politicians, to be like, legislation needs to change and it's them, but also we have this entire paradigm of medicine that's not standing up and advocating for us as well.
Yeah.
So do you guys have more questions?
I mean, always. But
What do you recommend the best, because I have now that I'm like leveled out post being on birth control, very regular period. And so it's very easy for me to say like, well, just track your period.
Yeah.
Right. And natural cycles is great. And I know exactly when I can get pregnant. But for people who have endo and for people who have irregular periods and don't really have the same luxury that I do, but don't want to be on birth control, how do they best not get pregnant?
Yeah, well, even with polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, so that's where ovulation can be tricky. That's really at the crux of things, is that we've got insulin stimulating the cells that in the ovaries to make excess testosterone, and then they don't ovulate the way that they should. And so with that, it's very interesting because I was always taught you can't do fertility awareness method in those situations. What's really interesting is Natural Cycles actually did the studies on it. They actually started taking the data and seeing, and they're like, you can actually do it. You still have the same temperature spikes. It's just not going to be as predictable. And initially, you're not going to be able to be like, oh, it's going to be somewhere in the middle. It's going to take more time, and it makes you being aware of your body. The other thing is that we know that PCOS responds very well to through nutrition and lifestyle changes. And so that's the other thing, is that as you're optimizing those aspects of your life, your ovulation can become more regular. So as we get insulin in check, as we get inflammation in check, then the ovaries start responding. And you have to keep in mind that maybe you'll never have the 28-day cycle, which I think it's like, is this normal? It was like 13% of women actually have a 28-day cycle. Maybe you're gonna be more like a 40-day cycle. And so you have to know what is true for you and all of that. With endometriosis, there's not ovulatory dysfunction as part of that. We do have like egg quality issues due to inflammation, so that's a whole other fertility aspect of it, that the cycles should be regular. And if women don't want to, like many women with endometriosis don't want to be on birth control or things like Lupron, which is basically chemical castration of women. Like they don't want to be on these things and they don't get a lot of options. You can still track your period, but there's a lot. It's like, I feel like sometimes, you know, I look at these chronic conditions and I just don't think women get enough respect that it's almost like a full-time job to really manage your life. And when I talk about like how, you know, I don't eat fast food. I haven't eaten fast food in decades. And it's just as one example. And people are like, so you think you're so good? And I'm like, no. Not
on purpose.
My system doesn't get the same leadway that someone else might. So maybe your system can eat fast food and you're fine. And I eat fast food and I have to deal with gut symptoms for like the next like 6 weeks, which I always thought, oh, my gut symptoms, like that's related to the food is directly impacting my gut. Turns out I had endo all over my bowels. So I'm like, it was that affecting the endo was affecting my bowels. And so I always think it's funny when people get like, where they're like kind of judgmental about it. I'm like, listen, if I could just binge eat French fries all day, I would be about it. But I can't because it will F up my body and I will want to die. Like it's not a great place to be.
Yeah.
Is endo seen as a disability?
It should be. I actually like put that on Threads. I was like, endometriosis should be a disability, full stop. You should get period leave for this. And it was interesting how many people were like, so many people in the US are just like so unwilling to like be empathetic and to like, I really look at like what we've done in the school system, like taking out art, taking out all these things that I'm like, we've lost empathy.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's so interesting to me how many people were like, why should I have to pay for you to get time off just because you have a period? I was like, I would like you to have a Chucky doll living inside your body, going on a rampage with knives, and then you let me know. And it's not just stabbing your uterus, it's all up in your anus too. Let me know how you're doing at work.
And it's not just around your period too for some people, right? Like it can be more often.
Yeah. Well, it can be ovulation as well, can be really painful. For me, when I was on the pill and I just was like, I'm just not gonna have periods, like who needs those? And I still had ruptured ovarian cysts, went to the ER multiple times. I had chronic pelvic pain. They kept thinking like I was tearing muscles in my pelvis because I was a dancer. And they're like, that must be going on. Like you're tearing muscles or something like that. No, turns out I had endo all over my ligaments in there. Like, and I, you know, and the myth goes that like, oh, the pill was going to slow that down. No, actually it punts the ball. And the longer you go without getting a diagnosis, the more likely you are to have deep infiltrating endometriosis. So like when I did this gel MRI, when I looked at it, I was like, my bowels are literally glued to my uterus. It was like so sad looking. It was just like, on there. I'm like, no amount of Lupron's gonna fix it, like nothing. Like, and if I didn't want to get pregnant, I could keep doing what I was doing and keep myself out of pain. But I was like, I wanna get pregnant. There's no real good data on the increased risk of colon cancer, but if you have a highly inflammatory tissue sitting there for the next decade, like after it's already done 3 decades, like just causing inflammation in that area, I worry about colon cancer. I had bilateral endometriomas, and it's a slight increase in ovarian cancer risk, but like if I can, I'm doing all the diet, I'm doing all the other stuff, why wouldn't I do everything to decrease my risk in that as well?
Wow. That's crazy, but you are a success story.
with the team of people helping me.
Yeah, because for a lot of people, they can't get pregnant when they have endo, right? It's like, is it one of the leading causes of infertility?
Yeah, so endometriosis and PCOS, the two things that we brought up. What's interesting is that there's some research pointing to possibly 50% of infertility cases is actually endo, with 25% of endo having no symptoms. And they do have symptoms like anxiety and fatigue, but what are we told as women? You're crazy.
That's
of
normal.
course you're anxious, you're tired, you're a mom, or you're a woman, or you're in your 30s, you're old, right? And so it's a lot of like dismissal of things that could definitely be signs. And I was saying, like, the gastrointestinal issues. IBS is this garbage bucket diagnosis that too many endo women end up in, and then they find out later, like, oh, actually pain with bowel movements and cramping and diarrhea, like that was endo the entire time.
Wow. Thank God for you.
Yeah, for my
spreading
loud
the
mouth
gospel.
and being like,
we need it.
if this happened to me, I'm not gonna let it happen to
Well, you're
anyone
kind of
else.
like us, like, you know, you've gone through a lot, and now, and you've worked on so much on yourself, and you're just like helping other people. So we all kind of have the same mission.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you, so in your eyes right now, what needs to change in hormonal health, and where do you think the future should be going?
Yeah, well, I feel like the femcare aisle needs to change. It is even still, like, I see all these amazing brands come out, and it's still just, they're not really there. There's gummies. Now there's gummies in the femcare aisle, which again is not really helping. And then it's still taken over by Midol, and then like Vagisil to make your vagina smell better. And it's like, when I'm in excruciating pain, I just want, give me the cycle soother patch, give me like a protocol when I go to the CVS, and I can just grab all the things that I need, and it's just not like that. And you all still have to walk to the way back. There's just, I think it needs to start there, honestly. I mean, there's so much great stuff on the internet that's happening now, but again, am I only getting that because it's my algorithm? Like, is the word really getting out there about the different phases of the cycle and, you know, different products that are non-toxic? Like, I don't really know, because I don't know what other people see on the on their algorithm. And I think that, we need to be, only I think 1.5 or 2% of VC funding goes to women founders. You have a better shot of being a successful women's health business if you have a male founder. And it's just like, we're the ones that should be telling this story, because we're the ones that have experienced it, and we're the ones that care the most. And so it's like, give us your money. Give us your money and give us a shot. Like, you know, it's just like been historically like white men that run businesses, but that's because they were the only ones given the opportunity. Like, we just give women the opportunity, and we're going to just go shoot to the moon. And also more research in women's bodies. Like, that would be cool. And I think that the fact that Natural Cycles does that, and I know Clue is a period tracking app that also like creates more research. Like, as long as we can do that, like, I'll happily be like a test dummy, like, research me. So those things.
Anything you would add?
No, that's handled it.
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for sitting down with me and being so candid about your stories, and for being on a mission to change women's medicine for the better.
Ditto.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If this is the kind of content you're into, then I highly recommend checking out this.